Piston doors are so super cool. They add such a great flavor to the world, but big ones can be kind of complex. However, they don't have to be. I'm your host, OmLedu, and this episode we're going to build a super simple expandable castle gate. The max size version is 15 blocks long, but you could always make this shorter or skinnier in any dimensions that you really want to do. So no matter what kind of build you're trying to add this to, you can totally get it done. And of course, your door is not limited to fence posts. You can build it with solid blocks or iron bars or walls, anything that can be pushed by pistons. We'll also go over how you can add custom activation toggles, so no matter where you want your pressure plates or your buttons or even your targets to be, or how many of them you want, that will all be totally up to you and in your control. For the tutorial, we're going to build it at the maximum size, but if you want to build it smaller, you just shrink the build area. The main thing that matters and won't change is that it will be 6 blocks wide, and we need to dig down 4 on the front 4 rows. And on the back 2 rows, we're going to dig down 3. Now the build area is going to be 10 wider than your gate. So the max size gate, which will be 15 wide, will have a build area that is 25 wide. So just add 10 to however big you want your gate to be. Then go to one side, and 2 blocks from the front and 2 blocks from the wall, we need to place 3 rows of sticky pistons facing up, and these will correspond with the size of your gate. So if you want the max size gate, we need a row of 15 sticky pistons. And we need a row of blocks on top of the pistons that will be the floor blocks. And again, if you want your gate to be skinnier, you just use less pistons. The number of pistons corresponds with the wideness of the gate. But we need a row of dust next to the bottommost sticky pistons. Then we need to place upper slabs on the middle sticky pistons, going all the way across, and we need to place redstone dust on top of these slabs. And this does need to be slabs, not solid blocks. But now we need a max delay repeater going into the bottom row of dust, then 2 repeaters with no extra delay in these positions. Now we need a solid block coming out of the repeater on the right, and solid blocks above these 2 repeaters and before them as well. Then we need a repeater on a 3-tick delay, so we need to poke this repeater 2 times. And now we need to connect all of this with dust. So just place 4 dust like so. Then place another solid block coming out of that one and looping back around over there. After that, we need another row of slabs next to the bottommost pistons. So these will be upper slabs directly next to the bottommost pistons on the opposite side from everything else that we've done. Now we need a row of dust on top of these slabs all the way next to each piston. Then an observer facing away connected to that dust, and 2 repeaters on a maximum delay going into that observer. The pistons will activate as you adjust the repeater, but then connect this with dust to the other dust over there, like so. Now we need another row of sticky pistons facing up, directly next to the topmost sticky pistons, above this dust down there on the slabs. Then on top of this new row of sticky pistons, we need a row of observers facing away. So these observers are facing away from the original sticky pistons, like so. So this is what we should have. Now we need a row of targets right next to this row of sticky pistons, diagonally down from the observers. Then diagonally down from those targets, we need a row of solid blocks. Then place dust on top of these new blocks so that they connect to the targets like so. Then come back over here, and we need an observer facing away so that the back of that observer is pressed up against the block with the dust on top. So this is what you should have. Now we need a repeater 1 block away from the observer, pointed toward the observer, a dust connecting that repeater to the observer and to the other dust. Then come back over on this side, and we need a solid block right here so that we can place a repeater on top of it connected to that bottom row of dust, going into a solid block, and then 2 more solid blocks going toward the front, like so. Now we need a temporary block so we can place an observer facing away, so the back of that observer is powering that row of dust right there, and then 3 dust on top of these 3 blocks. And that is all there is to the triple extender. You are now done with this section. Now we need to have the input that will activate all of this. So come back over here, and above this dust right here, we need a solid block, and then diagonally down from that, we need more solid blocks in this pattern right here. So like 6 and then 2. Now we need a comparator going into that floating solid block on subtraction mode, a repeater on max delay going into the side of that comparator, then a repeater facing the other direction, also on a max delay, with 2 dust connecting these repeaters together. Then a solid block next to that comparator and repeater, with another comparator pointed into that block, and then a copper bulb. This copper bulb is what needs to be activated in order to toggle the door. But now we need a torch on top of this block, a copper bulb above the subtraction mode comparator, and another comparator coming off of this bulb, going into a solid block that will be floating diagonally up with a torch on top. With that, the bottom section is now totally complete. All that's left is to build the top section that will close the gate. What you see here is the maximum height and is what we're going to build in this video. But if you want it to be shorter, the only thing we need to know is that this bottommost torch, the one next to this comparator and bulb, needs to be opposite of the topmost torch. So if you build this shorter, rather than at the maximum height, your topmost opposite torch will be in a slightly different place. But regardless, we just need the topmost opposite torch to power that dust. So let's pretend that this was our topmost opposite torch. In which case, we don't need this very top torch, we just put some dust on top, so that that topmost opposite torch is now powering that dust. Or let's say our topmost opposite torch is 1 block higher, so it's right here. Well, for this, all we would have to do is place a block above it, and it will now power that dust. So again, no matter how all of this ends up aligning because of your height, you just want the topmost opposite torch from the bottom one to activate this topmost dust. And your gate can be up to 8 blocks tall. So for this, I'm going to use 7 fence posts and then place a decorative solid block on top of that to hide the pistons. Because now we need to place temporary blocks going up so that we can place 3 regular pistons facing down directly on top of our gate, like so. So again, your gate can be up to 8 blocks tall and then 3 regular pistons. But before we build the whole gate, we actually want to push this section up. So come over here and place a temporary button on the side of this bulb and press this button a few times. Now it may not look like it's working very well, but that's because the topmost pistons are actually in the wrong place. So we need to just keep pressing this button until there are 3 blocks of air from the bottom of our gate to the floor. So 3 blocks of air in between our gate and our floor, like so. Once you've pressed the button enough to make this happen, now the topmost pistons are aligned in the correct position. But once we have those pistons aligned, now we need to go up with blocks and torches above this one right here. But we need to remember what position that bottom one is set to. Because again, we want the topmost torch to be the opposite of the bottommost torch. So if you built it at this maximum height, then the topmost opposite torch will be right here 1 block above where the pistons are. So again, my bottommost torch is currently off. This might change, but it's currently off, and so my top one needs to be on. And again, if you built this shorter, we just need the topmost opposite torch to be able to toggle this topmost dust right here. And this dust will be on a block that is aligned with the topmost piston. Regardless of your height, that dust needs to be on a block that is aligned with the topmost piston. But now, if you haven't already, go ahead and build the rest of your gate. And I'm going to build it in the same way as I did earlier, building it 3 blocks lower than it's supposed to be, and then just pressing the button until the top pistons are aligned. I just thought this was an easier way, not only to test it, to make sure you didn't make the gate too big to where the pistons can't push it, but also so that you don't have to perfectly measure where exactly the topmost piston should be for custom height. Again, we just need 3 blocks of air between the floor and the bottom of the gate. And now all of the pistons should be perfectly aligned where they're supposed to be. But now we just need to place a row of solid blocks directly next to the top row of pistons, then another row of solid blocks 1 block down from that, and then a row of decorative blocks 1 block below that. And the reason I say decorative is because you will be able to see these blocks. But now we need to place rows of dust on top of all 3 of these rows, except the top one, these 2 blocks right here between our torch tower and our rows don't need to be there, so break those out. So just make sure there is dust on top of each of these 3 rows, And now we need to place observers facing up at the ends of the first 2 rows, or the top 2 rows. 2 observers facing up like so, then a solid block coming out of the bottom one right there. So this solid block will be right next to this bottom row of dust. Then a dropper facing any direction in between the 2 observers, and then a observer facing away diagonally up from that other observer, looking at that dust, then a repeater with no extra delay from that observer to the top row of dust. And that's it. All that's left is to add an input. Now the gate may look a little funny because we activated those observers up there, but just go press the button and make sure that the gate fully opens and fully closes with each push of the button. If it doesn't, either something is wrong or maybe the world is super laggy, which we will talk about how to resolve that near the end of the video. For now, we need to talk about running your custom inputs. So whether you want to have buttons or pressure plates or targets or all of the above, we just need to run as many inputs as we want to where it toggles that backmost copper bulb. So like if we want to have a button on the wall right here, we would just run dust from that button over here to this bulb. Or if we want to have a pressure plate or 15 buttons or anything, you just run it to this copper bulb. Any input that will toggle that bulb will end up toggling the door. So if we want to have like a button on the ground or a pressure plate on the ground, we would just run it over here to this bulb. Just make sure that none of the dust connects to any of the pre-existing dust. So like right here, we would need to like dig down some to make sure that the dust doesn't connect. But it's as easy as that. Of course, you may need to add repeaters to refresh the signal if your inputs are super far away, but all of your inputs can share the same line or they can all combine on the same line. Just as long as they power that copper bulb, it will all work. And remember, to power a component, you can either power a block that is touching that component or have the dust pointed directly into the component itself. It doesn't matter either way. Just anything that will toggle that bulb will toggle the door. So you could have targets up in the wall that you have to shoot in order to open the door. Just connect that target over to that bulb, or you could have skulk sensors in the wall to, register when you shoot a rocket or something. Or you can have pressure plates on the ground or buttons on the wall or, any sort of input that you can possibly connect to another component will work to power this door. Now, if you use a lever, that's kind of like a locking mechanism. When you turn the lever on, it will toggle the bulb, which will toggle the door, but now that bulb stays powered because the lever is still on. So now, even if you activate one of the other inputs, that bulb won't toggle because that bulb is still receiving power from the lever. So that lever locked the door until that lever is turned off. Once the lever is turned off, now you can toggle the door with any of the inputs. Just remember that the lever itself will always toggle the door when it's turned on. So it's not just locking the door, but it's toggling the door and then locking it. And I totally forgot that there is a bug that observers can notice active dust upon world load. So we need to switch out this topmost dust with a dropper. So this dropper will be toggled by the topmost opposite torch rather than dust, but nothing else needs to be changed. Now when it comes to hiding your redstone, if you don't like that there's a row of observers in the floor, you can kind of conceal it by placing other observers in the floor, and maybe like some deep slate and cobblestone. But if you want to do this, don't place observers on top of the sticky pistons that are facing the same direction as the current observers. You can place them opposite, like you see here, but don't place them in the same direction, unless you place a slab directly behind the observer. That would be okay. But if you have a solid block behind the observer, like that deep slate right there, that will cause problems. Now, if your world is super laggy and the gate just refuses to cooperate, there are a few things we can do. For one, always spam light around your redstone. Just spam some torches to prevent light updates. Light updates are super laggy. But also, we can go ahead and increase the delay on all of the repeaters except for this one. Don't increase that one's delay at all. Just leave that one as it is, but then each other section of repeaters, just increase it by 1. But that middle one, we need to add a repeater, so we'll come back to that. But adding delay to every section of repeaters will just kind of make it more stable. So if things are not happening in the correct order, this should fix it. So for this middle one, we need to add a repeater since we can't increase the max delay repeaters, but we need to loop the redstone around so it's all still connected. So we need a couple of blocks with a couple of dust and then just loop it down under here and connect it to the other redstone where it was. And then also your input repeaters will also need to be increased. Or not necessarily, but this is more like a big old band-aid. You know, no matter what kind of lag you're experiencing or what the problem is, increasing the delay on every single section will just make it more stable and should fix it regardless. Now, of course, you could always go in and try to identify specifically what the problem is and just increase the delay on that section. But, you know, you would have to be versed in redstone or sit here and stare at it for a long time, so it's just nice to have a big old band-aid, you know, so no matter what is wrong, just go through and increase all the delay, and it should work after that. If it doesn't, you know, and you're still experiencing problems, or if you have any questions or requests, feel free to talk to me down in the comments, and I will do my best to help you out. But that's all we got for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, share, and subscribe. Be sure to leave a comment, even if it's just to say hi. I would love to hear from you either way. And because of all of y'all's support, the channel keeps on a-growing. So thank you so much. A big shout out to all of my subscribers and all of my supporters, and to you. Thank you again so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. Always remember that you are totally awesome, but above all, don't forget to have fun. Bye-bye.